Okay, we're going to go to the third preference, and the third preference is how we make decisions. Do we make decisions based on our analytical thinking? In other words, are you listening to your brain? Are you listening to reasons? Or do you make decisions based on your beliefs and on your feelings? For example, you're looking for a house and you're visiting different situations, and finally you enter a house and you say, yes, that's the one, So that's kind of a gut reaction when you really feel very strongly that you like this house. You don't know how much it costs, you don't know if it's the right neighborhood, you don't know about the schools, but hey, you fall in love with the house. So that's people who belong to the right side of the spectrum. And of course, there are other people looking for a house. They will first make 2 columns about the advantages, the disadvantages, the pros and the cons, and do I have enough money? Is this the right neighborhood? They have a very intellectual process to support the decisions that they make. So again, it's not because you have a brain that you don't have a heart, or that you have a heart that you don't have a brain. It's which one do you use first? Are you first listening to your heart, or are you first listening to your brain? 2 different ways of operating. Okay. So analytical people, they say, I need to step out of the situation. So they remove themselves from the situation. While the other people say, I want to step in the problem. I want to put myself, in English we have an expression, I want to put myself in your shoes. In other words, literally try to understand, put myself in your shoes. So if you have cancer, I'm going to try to understand what it's like to have cancer. Because it's for that category of people, it's only by trying to understand that I can sympathize with you. So do you decide with your head or with your heart? Do you resolve problem in a logical manner? So often, doing graphs and putting some order. While the other people, they like to interact. It's by, again, the interaction that they feel more comfortable. So the notion of how much can you identify? So the hunter has no problem killing the animal because he has a lot of distance. So he appears cold and heartless, and is not particularly concerned by the animal, while this person actually feels bad. So usually that category of people do not hunt. So do you aspire the truth? Do you want justice to be objective, or do you tend to really build positive relationships with people? Whether it's fair or not fair, you don't really care as long as you have good connections with people. So are you more rational or more empathic? So if you have to shave the sheep, do you treat everybody the same way? Or do you have a customized approach? Everybody should be treated differently based on how they feel. This is, I don't know if you have this practice in Turkey, and this comes from France, when you have a goose and you stuff the goose to make foie gras. Are you familiar? So it's a terrible practice where you take a bird and you put a lot of food down the throat of the bird, and and it makes the liver increase, and it's a delicacy in France. Okay, but it's also a real torture for animals. So this person looks at the meal. It doesn't look at the suffering of the bird, and clearly the other person looks at the bird and say, "Oh, if that happened to me." It would be terrible, and therefore I will not eat foie gras because it's a horrible situation. So it's how much do you identify with the situation in which you are in. I was once in a casino, a casino, at a blackjack table, and there was this woman who obviously was very new to her job. She was the person who gives out the and every time, so of course the people lose money, and she's taking the money from them. So every time she was taking the money, she say, "I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." So I said, this woman, she overly identified with the people, and she had to take money away from them, and she felt so bad. I said, my goodness, at the end of the day, she's going to be totally, totally exhausted emotionally, because can you imagine to be so sorry every single time? How do you communicate decisions? Now, when I was working in my pharmaceutical company, there was a team of researchers who had been working on a vaccine. They were researching vaccines. So they were making vaccines, very important work. People are very, very passionate about their work and often work many, many hours beyond their normal schedule. And they had worked for 3 years on a vaccine, and finally the company decided that this vaccine was not going to be commercially viable. In other words, they couldn't sell the vaccine, it was too expensive, and they were not going to make enough money on the vaccine. So they sent an email to 100 people saying, well, we have decided that this is not commercially viable, and therefore starting next Monday you will be on a new project. So they communicated something that was real, and the people could understand that. But the reaction was enormous, because they were so angry that nobody took the time to come and talk to them. And it cost the company enormous amounts of money, because some people left. They were so disappointed. Some people became sick. Some people went to work in different departments. So they had a team of 100 people that really worked very well together, that got dislocated, disgruntled, demotivated, and simply because somebody did not take the time to meet with them and to really explain their decisions. So it was a good example of how, if you are too analytical and you don't take into account the impact of what you do on other people, the damage can be enormous. So that's the danger in an organization where leaders or people who get promoted are invariably seen as people who are analytical, or analytical people are seen as having a good sense of leadership, but it could really play against them if they don't really have this ability to build relationships and to engage their people. People can accept decisions that are difficult. For example, the researchers could accept that the vaccine research would be stopped, as long as they are included in the process of decision making. In other words, as long as you consult with them. There's nothing worse than to impose decisions on people without communicating. So would you say, so this is a good example, the bird ate the cat ate the bird. So the police officer say, well, just buy another bird, okay? And they're totally oblivious to the relationship that the woman had with the bird. So in politics, you have very analytical, kind of cold-looking people versus, again, sorry for the French examples, but and so would you say that Turkey is more an analytical culture or more emotional? Yeah, I was watching Turkish TV the other day. I don't understand Turkish, but there was this, do you understand the expression soap opera? A soap opera, it's like one of those, how do you say that in Turkish?
Dizi.
Dizi? Okay. So there is, I just opened the TV, right? And there is this man, like a real Turkish macho guy, with a gun, and he's killing the woman, and he's crying, and he's crying. And it was it was very funny, because there was so much, emotions. No, it was very funny, because to me it looked like there was this over magnifying emotion, okay? At the same time, it didn't match the image of a real macho person, so there was like this. So Turkey is an emotional culture. So if you are too analytical, you will invariably be perceived by people as cold, logical, rational, emotionally disconnected, having no empathy, being hyper-realistic. In other words, you rationalize everything. And you need to understand everything from a rational point of view. And of course, there are many things that are not rational. Falling in love, for example, it's not very rational, okay? So you become a brain, magnified brain. If you become too emotional, then you over-identify with events. In other words, everything is happening to you. You personalize things. You lack objectivity, and you are so focused on being liked and being popular, and people should appreciate you, and therefore it's very difficult to communicate difficult messages. And that's why the danger is going to be when you start convincing people, or you try to influence people to adopt strategic management mindset. People may not like you. They perceive you as a disturber. You know, somebody was really bothering me. Don't bother me with this. And of course, if you take it personally, and if you magnify the issue, then you're not having enough distance, because it has nothing to do with you. It has more to do with their habits and their way of doing things than it has with your message. So if you're too afraid of being liked, then you constantly try to please people, which then becomes a problem.